Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Welcome back to New Vegas, where today we're going to be talking about the Anti-Materiel Rifle. This is by far one of the most iconic weapons in all of Fallout, even though it really only shows up in Fallout New Vegas. It definitely left an impact on a lot of players, and it's even on the cover art, which is awesome. So the Anti-Materiel Rifle is the big old 50 cal that you're probably going to get towards the end game, although I know plenty of people that love to rush this thing early on, which you absolutely can, especially if you want to run right up to New Vegas, do some gambling with high luck, get all the money from the casinos, and then just exchange it for an anti-material rifle, and then you're going to be set for pretty much the rest of the game, because the anti-material rifle is one of the most powerful weapons in the entire game. Also, probably one of the most iconic weapons. I mean, even the stance of the New Vegas character looks awesome and is very iconic. Although, funny enough, a little side note is that this is based off of an anime too, at least in terms of looks. This is based off of Jinro, the Wolf Brigade, which is a pretty cool anime. I'd recommend it if you're looking for something that's kind of short but future dystopian, which you might be into since you're into Fallout, I'm assuming. And originally, at least in the anime, this does look fairly close to the actual outfits that they wear, although they're not carrying around 50 cals. They're actually carrying around MG42s, which also look really awesome, and I kind of wish that was in New Vegas. There's probably mods for it, but yeah, that would be another really cool gun to have in this game too. Anyway, moving on to the anti-material rifle and its stats. The anti-material rifle requires 100 guns in order to wield and 8 strength. It is one of the heftiest guns in the game, so it does take a lot of strength to wield, and it does require very high guns to wield, which this weapon does actually benefit heavily from having enough strength and having enough guns to use it effectively. Otherwise, I do notice it swaying quite a bit, and 50 cal rounds can be a little bit expensive, at least early on, so you may not want to waste a whole lot of them. This is the only 50 cal weapon too, at least in the regular game, and also if you're not counting the 12.7 millimeter guns, but those are different 50 cal, so you don't worry about that. Don't worry about this. Is just the 50 cal. So if you find any 50 cal rounds, they're only going to go to the anti-material rifle, unless again you got mods for other specific weapons that you could put in the game. This weapon does 110 damage per shot, so it is very high damage, as you would kind of expect. This does 49 damage per second. It is very slow on the rate of fire. You do not cycle the bolt very quick on this, as well as there is the animation of your character being pushed back every time you're firing this. So that does take a little bit longer every time that you shoot this to cycle the bolt than it would other guns. It's a little bit slower than other weapons like the hunting rifle that are also bolt action, and also slower than like the varmint rifle. This does 110 crit damage, so very high crit damage as well. If you're hitting crits with this, you're probably dealing big chunks of damage to basically anything in the game, if not outright killing them. This has a 1x crit modifier, so average. This costs 65 action points to use in VATS, so it is not the best VATS weapon. You're probably going to get 1, maybe 2 shots off in VATS with this. Maybe you could go to 3 if you have all the VATS perks, but that's probably pushing it. This has extremely low spread at 0.015, so it is extremely accurate at basically any range. Most of the bolt action rifles are extremely accurate. I think actually all of them are extremely accurate. Same goes with like the lever actions, and some of the semi-auto weapons can be as well, or the single shots. This has a magazine of 8, so you actually do get quite a few shots with this, surprisingly. This weighs 20 weight, so it is very heavy, one of the heaviest rifles in the entire game, and this has 95 health to it, which isn't a whole lot, but then again, it's a bolt-action rifle, so you're not going to be shooting it very often. It's very similar to like the hunting rifle, where you're likely only going to be using this to engage enemies, and that's about it. Once enemies start getting up close, the 50 cal isn't as good. It's still very good. It's still very powerful. So if it's just one enemy at a time, you can totally just hip fire this and kill things. But if there's multiple enemies, then the 50 cal is not really that great for taking out enemies once they get really close. Even if you have the explosive rounds, but the explosive rounds can also deal damage to you, so it might not be good. You probably want to switch off of this to something else. Mostly you're going to be using this to snipe at enemies and to engage enemies at a distance. For the pros of the anti-material rifle, as you would expect, this does really high damage. It also has really long range, and it's very effective at those very long ranges. And it also has really good ammo. It has quite a few different ammos that you can load into this, one of them being absolutely insane and probably my favorite ammo out of anything in the game, besides maybe some of the explosive ammos, because those are super fun to play around with too. The 50 cal is fantastic for that. The cons to this are also kind of what you'd expect. It's extremely heavy. The ammo is also very heavy, so if you're playing on the hardcore mode, taking something like Pack Rat is going to be very useful for this type of weapon. You might also want to invest in some other perks too, like heavyweight, so that you can cut the weight down further with this, because it does go over 10 pounds, so you could cut that in half, and it also has a very slow rate of fire. Follow-up shots are not the anti-material rifle's strong suit, at least at close range. Again, at long range, it's fine because most enemies aren't going to be attacking you back at those longer ranges. If they are, then that means they probably also have long range weapons like you, so that could also be an issue. And this weapon you may have to buy, although you don't necessarily have to buy it because there are actually characters that do carry around 50 cals. They're just going to be into the later game. And same goes with some of the DLCs, like the White Legs up in Zion can have these. Once you go there, I believe above level 20 or maybe it's above level 30, they'll have the 50 cal rifles there, and you can take them off of them. They can also shoot you with them, and that's pretty terrifying to get hit by this or get hit by the brush gun. They're also very damaging that they can have. Also, NCR Rangers could also have this. They sometimes carry this around, at least the veteran Rangers, not the regular Rangers. So once you're getting so far into the story and you're such a high level, then you might run into them, especially if you're going against the NCR. There's also two versions of the Anti-Materiel Rifle. There is the standard Anti-Materiel Rifle, and there's the Gunner's Arsenal version. The Gunner's Arsenal version can be modded, but other than that, they're exactly the same in terms of stats. For the different ammos that you have for the Anti-Materiel Rifle, you have the standard 50 cal rounds. These ones just do the base damage, which is already extremely high, so they are very good to keep, and you can usually find quite a lot of them from different vendors. You also just don't need a whole lot of them anyway. If you're carrying around like 100 of these, that should suit you just fine in most situations. You're probably not going to end up using more than that in at least one setting. You also have the AP rounds, the armor-piercing rounds. These ones nerf your damage slightly by 5 damage or 5% damage, which isn't that much for the Anti-Materiel Rifle, but you also just punch through 15 armor, which is basically most enemies. So if you just want to hit things as hard as you can or ignore their armor entirely, the armor-piercing rounds might be decent for you to take, and again, you don't need very many of these. They're not like the 5.56 armor-piercing where you'd want to carry around a lot of them. There's the incendiary rounds, which nerf your damage slightly, but they do make it so when you hit an enemy, it lights them on fire, and then the fire will deal damage over time. This one's okay. It's not really that great. It doesn't really benefit you that much more than armor-piercing or standard rounds, but it is something unique to the 50 cal, so that's kind of cool. Sadly, the incendiary rounds are also not affected by Pyromaniac. I wish they were. I don't know why they weren't, but yeah, at least in the base game, they are not affected by that. So it's just you kind of get damage over time, but a lot of the time you'll be one-shotting stuff, at least if you're playing on like the normal difficulty. And on the higher difficulties, you're probably just okay with shooting things multiple times anyway with the 50 cal. So incendiary rounds are just kind of awkward. And then the most fun ones that you get are the explosive rounds for the 50 cal. These ones you can only buy from vendors, you can't make these. These come with the Gunner's Arsenal DLC as well, which makes it so basically any vendor or most vendors can carry around 50 cal explosive rounds. So you might be able to find these from like traveling merchants. You're probably not going to find a whole bunch. Usually you don't find more than 20 on a merchant. But these are really strong. These are basically like the 40mm grenades, but you put it in the 50 cal and they do the 50 cal's level of damage. This one also is not affected by explosive perks, so if you get Demo Expert, you're not actually going to get more damage from loading in explosive rounds, sadly. I wish that was also a thing. Same goes with like splash damage, could affect this too, but I don't think it does. So I think the only thing that actually does affect this perk-wise would be like hit the deck, because it still gives you explosive damage resistance, and I believe that would still count towards most of the damage here, so that one wouldn't be a terrible one to take, especially if you're afraid of accidentally blowing yourself up with a 50 cal, which can happen, because if enemies do get too close, or if you're at a weird angle and you might hit a wall that seems like you would shoot over it, but it's got a wonky hitbox, you might knock yourself down too, and that kind of sucks with the 50 cal. The explosive rounds are super fun though, and I would highly recommend them. There is also the match rounds that you can also load into this. Match rounds you can only make if you have the hand loader perk. You also need 100 repair to make these. And these ones just basically make it so your gun does a little bit more damage, although it breaks a little bit quicker, and it has better accuracy. These ones are fine. You can use them over regular 50 cal rounds, but honestly I don't notice that much of a difference. Generally the regular 50 cal rounds are good enough. Accuracy is not an issue with the 50 cal because it's already super accurate, so making it slightly more accurate doesn't really matter. Yeah, the 50 cal is pretty great overall though. For a rating for the Anti-Materiel Rifle, I'd put this thing all the way up into S tier. It is a very strong weapon and a very good weapon overall. It was also particularly good on my run that I've been doing recently, which was 10 times enemy spawns. So 50 cal explosive rounds are actually really good then. Usually you could argue that the 50 cal is a little bit overkill and you don't really need it. Especially if you want to do fast follow-up shots, then the 50 cal is not really that great. You'd probably want to go with something like the Gobi Scout Rifle, or you would want to go with like Christina COS Rifle, or maybe even Paciencia, where those weapons have more common ammo, more lightweight ammo, are easier to repair unless you have like jury rigging, in which case none of them are very difficult to repair. And you can do faster follow-up shots than something like the Anti-Materiel Rifle. So on the lower difficulties or on like the non-modded difficulties like what I'm playing on, you could argue those ones to be better than this one, and that would be perfectly fine too. I would agree with that. If you just want the most stopping power, the Anti-Materiel Rifle is kind of your go-to. There's also a modded version, like I said with the Gunner's Arsenal mod. The Gunner's Arsenal version of this has 3 mods that you can put on it, and all 3 of these are kind of nice quality of life mods that change the weapon a decent amount, so let's talk about that. For the different mods, you can have a suppressor on this. This makes it so your weapon is silent, sort of. It's quiet. It's actually not completely suppressed like other suppressed weapons are. So, for example, if you shoot near an enemy and you don't hit an enemy, you might still alert them with the 50 cal, as opposed to if you shoot near an enemy with something like the varmint rifle, you're not as likely to alert them as the 50 cal is. That's about the only difference with the suppressor. The suppressor can be really strong on sneak builds, just like any of the suppressed guns can be, or really any gun in a sneak build can be pretty strong, just because of the way sneak works in this game. So it's kind of nice to have a suppressor on this. You can get a custom bolt for this, which gives you 20% faster rate of fire. That is actually pretty nice. It's a nice quality of life thing, although it's still going to be slower than basically all the other sniper type weapons, where it still has a very slow rate of fire, but it is quicker than what it otherwise feels like, so that does actually help with the 50 cal at least a decent amount. And then the last part that you can add to this would be the carbon fiber parts. The carbon fiber parts knock down 7 weight off of the 50 cal, so it goes from 20 weight to 13. That is more manageable, and this is still affected by the heavyweight perk, so that would cut it in half again. So it would go down to 6.5 weight, and that's very manageable then. That's not bad at all. The ammo itself can still be kind of heavy, so if you're playing on the hardcore difficulty, again, maybe pack rat might be a decent option just so that you can carry around more of it, but then again, you don't necessarily need to carry around a whole bunch of 50 cal rounds. Usually I'm carrying around like 100 explosive rounds and then a couple of regular rounds or match rounds, and that's about it. And I'm just using this to engage with. Even on like the 10 times enemy spawn mod that I'm running, you still usually don't need that many rounds for it before you can go and get a resupply or go and find another vendor that is selling stuff. And I would also put the modded version of the 50 cal also up into S tier. Again, this is more quality of life options. I would say the modded version is better, but the regular version is also really strong. So if you just like that, and maybe you like it better without the suppressor on there because of the noise it makes, I can understand that, and it's quite good. Tell me your thoughts on the Anti-Materiel Rifle. This one has been asked about a whole bunch. This one is a super fun weapon. It's really cool. It's very strong, and it's very iconic too. Really enjoy the 50 cal. Hope you guys enjoy it too. Tell me what other weapons you would like to see in the future. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.